All right, let's just dive right in. Welcome to This Explainer, where today we're tackling something that literally affects every single one of us, our habits. Think about it for a second. Have you ever wondered why those massive, earth-shattering New Year's resolutions almost always crash and burn by like mid-February? Whether you're trying to crush it at work, get in shape, or finally learn that new language, we tend to put so much pressure on ourselves to make these massive overnight changes. But what if I told you the real secret to lasting success has absolutely nothing to do with massive action? What if it's actually all about small, structured, almost invisible tweaks to your day? Today, we are unpacking the fascinating science behind James Clear's groundbreaking concept, atomic habits. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the power of tiny changes. Then, why we need to choose systems over goals. After that, we'll break down the habit feedback loop, dive into the 4 laws of behavior, and finally, look at breaking your bad habits. Let's get to it. Part 1. The power of tiny changes. So what exactly is an atomic habit? Well, it's a regular practice or routine that is not only tiny and super easy to do, but it's also the source of incredible power. Think of it as a totally essential gear in a massive system of compound growth. The keyword here is atomic. You know how atoms are the fundamental building blocks of molecules? Well, atomic habits are the fundamental building blocks of really remarkable results. They're these tiny routines that might seem totally insignificant at first glance, but man, they're incredibly mighty when you stack them together. Basically, habits act as the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you keep repeating them. Now, in the very beginning, you really won't see a noticeable difference between making a choice that's slightly better or slightly worse. Like, if you study Spanish for an hour tonight, you still haven't learned the language, right? And because those results don't show up immediately, it's so easy to just slide right back into our old, comfortable routines. But as time goes on, the trajectory of those small, daily choices separates massively. To put a really precise number on this, check out this stunning mathematical reality: 37. If you can manage to get just 1% better each day for a single year, the math works out so that you end up nearly 37 times better by the time you're done. No way, right? But it's true. On the flip side, if you get 1% worse each day, you decline pretty much down to 0. So why does this matter to you? Well, it means you should be way more focused on your current trajectory than your current results. Your outcomes are really just a lagging measure of your habits. All right, moving on to part 2, systems over goals. Here's where a lot of us get tripped up. Most people focus purely on outcome-based goals, hyper-focusing on exactly what they want to achieve. But the alternative, and honestly the much more successful approach, is building identity-based systems. This means shifting your focus to who you wish to become rather than what you want to get. True long-term thinking is actually goalless thinking. It's not about crossing the finish line on one single accomplishment. It's about a cycle of endless refinement. Every action you take is literally a vote for the type of person you want to become. I want to pause for a second and just let this sink in. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If you're struggling to change your habits or boost your productivity, I promise you, the problem isn't you. Bad habits repeat themselves over and over again, not because you don't want to change, but simply because you're using the wrong system for change. Which brings us to part 3, the habit feedback loop. So let's look under the hood at the actual roadmap of your brain. Every single habit you have proceeds through 4 stages in the exact same order: cue, craving, response, and reward. First up, the cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. Next comes the craving, which is basically the motivational force or the desire driving the habit. Third is the response, which is the actual action you perform. And finally, the reward, which is the end goal that satisfies that craving. This exact habit feedback loop is running continuously in the background, every single second of your life. Let's translate that loop into action in part 4, the 4 laws of behavior. Behold the 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. You can kind of think of each of these laws as a lever that influences human behavior. When all the levers are in the right positions, creating good habits feels absolutely effortless. So, if you want to build a good habit, you just need to ask yourself 4 simple questions. How can I make the cue obvious? How can I make the craving attractive? How can I make the response easy? And how can I make the reward satisfying? Let's look at some really clever ways to actually do this. To master that very first law, make it obvious, you can use an incredible tactic known as habit stacking. The formula is beautifully simple. After my current habit, I will do my new habit. This is such an ingenious way to anchor a brand new behavior to something you already do on autopilot every single day. So for example, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. Or when I serve myself dinner, I will always put veggies on my plate first. It gives your brain a concrete game plan so it knows exactly what to do next. Now, to tackle the third law, make it easy, we have the brilliant 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, scale it way, way down so it takes 2 minutes or less to do. So read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes simply take out my yoga mat. You see, a habit has to be established before it can be improved. By bypassing your brain's natural resistance and making the task ridiculously easy to start, you master the absolute most crucial art of all, just showing up. Finally, part 5, breaking your bad habits. So how do we get rid of the junk? To break a bad habit, we just flip the script and invert those 4 laws we just learned. Instead of making the cue obvious, make it invisible. Instead of making it attractive, make it unattractive. Make the response difficult. And make the reward unsatisfying. This gives you a literal foolproof checklist for uprooting those negative behaviors you're desperate to get out of your life. One of the absolute best ways to apply these inversion laws is through something called environment design. If you can't seem to get work done, make the bad habit invisible and difficult by leaving your phone in another room entirely. Finding yourself spending way too much time watching TV? Unplug the thing and put it in a closet after you use it. Feeling envious or constantly distracted online? Unfollow those toxic social media accounts right now. You're deliberately designing a high-friction environment so that giving into a bad habit actually takes a ton of physical effort. As we bring all of this together, I want you to burn this into your memory. It's the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. The first 3 laws, making it obvious, attractive, and easy, those increase the odds you'll perform a behavior right now, this time. But that 4th law, making it satisfying, that's what increases the odds you'll repeat the behavior next time. Getting that immediate emotional feedback is what ultimately wires your brain for lasting change. Which brings us to a final question for you to chew on. What is one tiny 1% change you can make today to completely shift your trajectory? You now know that real success isn't some dramatic once-in-a-lifetime transformation. It's the product of your daily systems. So here is my challenge to you. Pick one tiny habit, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. Start building your own atomic habits right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.